The views and opinions expressed by the speaker, host, commentator, or other third party in Ariva webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass are those of the speaker, host, commentator, or third party and do not necessarily reflect and represent the views and opinions of Ariva. Furthermore, Ariva does not warrant, express, or imply the merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose of any product information, service, or process presented by the speaker, host, commentator, or third party, and Ariva specifically disclaims any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or usefulness of any product information, service, or process presented. Finally, material or information presentation, opinion, process, or service by on any trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise during Ariva webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass do not constitute or imply Ariva's endorsement or recommendation of such opinion, process, service, item, or organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our free webinar today. I am Kate, and I'll be your host for this afternoon's Futureproof Your Career free live webinar. So later on, I'll be introducing our moderator and our speaker. But before that, I have some house rules for everyone. So in order to make live webinar successful, here are the house rules. First, if you can hear me, can you type 111 in the chat box? Again, if you can hear me, please type 111 in the chat box. And then, okay, I am seeing already someone's typing 111 already. If you cannot hear me, can you type 222? Again, if you can't hear what I'm saying, you can type 222. If the sound that you're hearing is breaking up, if it's choppy, you can type 2121. So far, all I'm seeing is 111. And if ever you don't understand what's happening right now, you can type in question mark, just for us to know if our audio is clear or not. So far, I see a lot of 111. So thank you for that. Thank you for replying. Next, later on, we'll have a 2 to 3 minute break. So I'll be announcing that later. And then all of your microphones will be temporarily disabled by the administrator during the discussion so that we will avoid interruptions. For questions and clarifications during the provided time after each topic, you can click the raise hand button so that the administrator can enable you. That will be for live questions during the Q&A. Again, your microphones will be temporarily disabled. And then we will be entertaining your questions after the topic. So we'll have a designated time for our Q&A, and we have a moderator for that. We will be entertaining one question at a time. You can type in your questions at the Q&A box later, or click the raise hand button so that we can do a live question. And then also we will appreciate if you can give us your feedback. All you have to do is scan the QR code that you're seeing right now. So that will help us. Your feedback will help us improve our services better. So there you go. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to acknowledge our participants who are in the provinces right now. We have participants coming from Bulacan, Calabarzon. We have participants coming from Angeles, Pampanga, from Baguio City, from Cebu City. We also have participants coming from Negros Oriental, Davao del Norte, and Davao del Sur. Wow! But this time, ito naman, the next batch of participants that I'm acknowledging are coming from outside the country. We have participants coming from Jakarta, Indonesia, from Selangor, Malaysia, from Sabah, Malaysia. We also have friends from Singapore who are tuned in right now, and from Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Hello there. Welcome to our webinar. So, as I've mentioned a while ago, I will be introducing our moderator and our speaker. So, first, let me introduce our moderator. She is a strategic, driven, and passionate servant leader with more than 22 years of successful experience in running and managing BPO operations in the Philippines, US, Europe, and Latin America. She has graduated with a broadcast communication degree from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with cum laude distinction. Let's welcome our moderator, Barbie Kizan. Now, for me to introduce, there you go. Hi, Miss Barbie. I'm seeing her right now. Excuse me. Time for me to introduce our speaker. He is an avid entrepreneur, a serial angel investor, a highly sought after keynote speaker, and an author of Futureproof Your Career and Company. He has, over the years, with his popular leadership seminars and workshops, he has inspired over 10,000 leaders and prepared them for the increasingly disruptive future. He's also an award-winning CEO of global companies such as Inspiro and SPI Global. Under his leadership, these companies won over 100 awards, including Best Company of the Year, Best Employer of the Year, and Best Leadership Team of the Year. He's also recognized as the ICT CEO of the Year. When he's not busy future-proofing leaders, he's busy child-proofing his home for his two young daughters. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our speaker, Mr. Maulik Parekh.
Hello. Can you guys see me?
Hey, Maulik.
Yes. Can you guys see me?
We can see you. I can see you.
You can see me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, Barbie. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
You look the same. You know, for all the audience members, I saw Barbie last some 10 years ago, and it looks like she has not aged at all. So, Barbie, you got to share with us what you are eating and what you are drinking so we can start doing the same thing.
Well, this almost feels like a reunion. You know, it's interesting. I was actually browsing my social media feed, and I had saw that there were some memories like to this day that, I don't know if you remember, we launched that site in Pampanga, with the president of the Philippines, and it was around this time 12 years ago. So, time flies.
That's right.
More than a decade. So.
Absolutely, so good to see you again, and thank you so much for hosting this event and agreeing to be the moderator. We were thinking about who would be the right person to partner with me, and we thought Barbie would be the right one because you're so articulate. You have worked in this industry for so many years, and some of the topics that we'll be talking about are also very near and dear to your heart.
No, absolutely. And, I'm really appreciative that you allowed me to be a part of this. And so really exciting. It's been generating a lot of buzz right now with your book. And, this is one of, the many, compelling and interesting endeavors that you're taking over. So, I guess we can start, and probably you've been asked this question. So I apologize if, you've answered this previously, but I'm sure a lot of our, the people listening right now is interested to know, what is the driving force behind, writing this book? Where did your inspiration come from?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I get that question all the time. There were two reasons for writing this book, idea for this book has been marinating in my consciousness for last 3 to 4 years now. But the initial impetus for this idea and for the book came from a professional reason as well as a personal reason. Professionally, as you know, Barbie, I had a great privilege of leading companies like SPI Global and Inspiro for the last 10 years. I did that until March of this year. And during my 3 years with the company, I saw some very disruptive forces starting to gain momentum, starting to gain speed. And I started paying attention to them. And I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I'm talking about the digital natives and the gig economy. So I'm sure in your job, you're probably feeling the same. But I saw artificial intelligence slowly infiltrating into our jobs and our processes. And suddenly it was starting to impact the types of conversations we were having with our clients compared to what we used to do 10 years ago. In terms of the digital natives, I started noticing that they started storming the workplace in a massive scale. And they started turning it upside down because they are a completely different breed. They are very different because of their upbringing in this digital world. And then the gig economy, I started noticing that the freelancing world was becoming very attractive to people of all ages. And it was not only changing who got the job done, but also where, when, and how. So while all of these things were going on at the workplace for me, my personal life, as you know, Barbie, was also disrupted 4 years ago for the better. My first daughter, Clara, was born, and that really changed everything for me because, my relationship with the future before that was all about putting together 3-year business plan or 5-year strategy or the business expansion forecast for the next 10 years. Uh, but with Clara's arrival, I started paying attention to the future differently. It became more meaningful to me. I started paying attention to each and every trend and each and every unique thought process that came across to me that gave me a glimpse as to where the future will end up. And I wanted to know what kind of future she will grow up into, what kind of skills and talents that she would need to succeed and thrive in this rapidly changing digital world over the next 10, 20 years. So if you think about it, the book is basically a result of this professional and personal curiosity. I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. And, I thank you for sharing as well the personal, reason. I mean, being a parent myself, I could not think of a stronger, compelling motivation to look at the future than our children. So, and they're very young, and I know they will be the future leaders and shapers of our generation. And so, Maulik, everyone right now, we're still in the middle of, COVID-19, in the throes of the global pandemic. Everybody is, writing about COVID, a lot of effort is still being done around the pandemic. And so what made you, write about the post-COVID world? What was your motivation on looking beyond the crisis that is still, looming in front of us today?
No, thank you for asking that. And, the crisis actually made me write this book because I sensed that everybody was so occupied, and rightfully so, in dealing with the crisis, how to take care of the business, how to take care of their employees, how to take care of your customers. Since March of this year, everybody has been really focused on it, and rightfully so. But I also felt that what defines or what differentiates a great leader from a good leader is that the great leader is able to deal with both urgent and important issues, but also the not urgent and important issues. So if I can just share with you a slide here real quick. Let's just see if If we can go through the slide. I think my computer may have just hung, but let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, so from my perspective, Barbie, COVID-19 is what I would consider an urgent and important issue. It's happening now, and it's also urgent. So we cannot deny it. We cannot avoid it. But we also need to pay attention to some of the forces that are not urgent. They are not impacting us as COVID-19 is. But if you give it some time, if you wait for 5-10 years, they would equally become so important in our lives. And that is the magic quadrant from my perspective. We have to, as leaders, find a balance between focusing on urgent and important issues, but also take a step back and focus on things that are not urgent today, but if you don't pay attention to them, they would become urgent in 5 to 10 years down the road. And I think one of the anecdote I use to explain this is imagine if you are standing at the beach, and if you have your head buried so deep in the sand, dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, you will miss out on all the storms that are coming together on the horizon. And before you know it, the storm is going to hit you. And forget about the current crisis you are dealing with, but what will drown you is the crisis that you're not paying any attention to. So it is so important for companies and leaders to, even during this crisis, take a step back and make sure that when this crisis disappears and starts fading away, and we hear some great news about the vaccines and other things that are in play right now that potentially will put this unfortunate episode behind us very soon. While that is happening, we still have to continue paying attention to it. So the reason I wrote this book is because I felt that this is the time when we need to give a wake-up call to the leaders and the companies that, hey, don't spend 100% of your time into dealing with this crisis. Take a step back and also look at the horizon and see what else may be coming your way, because otherwise you'll just get over this crisis. And when you get over this crisis, there's another crisis that's going to wait for you. And that's the one that probably is going to drown you. I hope that, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And it resonates a lot with me as well, as a leader in the middle of this pandemic, especially in the Philippines, where we'd had to mobilize a lot of people to work from home, which we've never really done before, and we're, like firefighting issues here and there. So for you to be able to, I guess, do it for us and take a step back and have that strategic foresight to look at the future with new and transformative lens, even in the time of, that's painful and piercing. I think, it's important because it's going to be a time of opportunity for us, and, reframing your future, and, the title of your book, Futureproofing Your Career and Company, is going to be, critical over the next decade. So I really appreciate that. We don't want to be caught by surprise, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Maulik, and so, we're talking about the next 10 years, and, could you share with us, why do you think the next decade is shaping up to be the most disruptive decade of our time?
Well, because if you look at these three forces, artificial intelligence, digital natives, and the gig economy, they look disparate, they look unrelated to us. But if you really look at them carefully and closely, you realize that they are siblings. They are brothers and sisters because they were all born out of the digital revolution. As the technology got better, they got better in what they are doing. And as they got better, the technology got better. So it created kind of a feeding frenzy within the technology world and these three forces. And as you look at the next 10 years, I'm suspecting that all of them are going to peak pretty much at the same time. So let's just talk about these three forces a little bit in detail. If you go to the next slide here, artificial intelligence. People ask me all the time, do you think artificial intelligence will take my job? And the answer to that question is maybe. And it maybe because if you fall into these three categories, then you should be fearful about artificial intelligence taking your job. And what are those three categories? The first category is, if whatever you're doing in your job today is boring, is repetitive, or it's predictable, then AI can do your job. And Barbie, you and I see this play out in the BPO world. A lot of our clients are taking care of the basic customer needs through their own AI-powered chatbots. They are not sending those basic calls to us anymore. They're taking care of them through AI-powered automation and AI-powered solutions. So if your job is very boring, very repetitive, like you're flipping burgers at a restaurant, if you are just creating same report every single week and sending it out to your higher ups, that part of your job could be replaced by AI. So that's number one. Secondly, if what you do has a very well-defined objective, and there is a lot of historical data that is available about what you do that you can feed to the AI algorithm with, then artificial intelligence can one day do your job. So to give you an example, earlier this year, actually the very first news that came out of this year on January 1st, 2020, was from Google Health. And they announced that their AI-powered mammogram reading machine did a better job at identifying cancerous tumor versus highly trained, highly professional doctors who have been doing this for years and years. And the reason they were able to do that is because there is a very well-defined objective that they gave to the AI that, hey, either you look for a malignant tumor or a benign tumor. And then they were able to feed this AI with tons and tons of data from the past mammograms. And they linked those mammograms with the outcome, whether there was a tumor, and if that was a tumor, whether it was a benign tumor or a malignant tumor. And very soon, AI was able to pick up how to read mammograms. And it did a better job than the human being. So it also kind of deflates the myth that is out there that AI would only impact the low-skilled jobs. Not really. There are a lot of AI companies who are now creating solutions that would potentially put paralegals out of work, that would potentially put a lot of the radiologists out of work. So it doesn't just impact the low-skilled workers, but it will also impact the high-skilled workers. So that's a number two category of the job that AI would impact. And the third category is if your job involves only basic cognitive skills, learning, reasoning, and predicting, for example, then AI can do your job. So, the good example that we can all relate to is when we are watching Netflix, for example, or when we are trying to buy something at Shopee or Amazon, you get this, you may also like these recommendations. Now, those recommendations are not done by people who are snooping into our lives. Those recommendations are actually done by AI. So if you find part of your job that fits into any of these three categories, then you should be clearly thinking about, if AI will take part of that job, what would you do next? What are some of the things that you need to upskill and reskill with? So that's just part of the force that we are talking about, which is AI. If you go to the next force, the digital natives. When we think of the digital natives, what do we think of? How old are your kids, by the way, Barbie, if I may ask?
My son just turned 7 yesterday, and I have a 4-year-old daughter, so very young.
Okay, very young. So you're not, you don't belong into the category of the digital natives, which is the Gen Zers or the millennials. But when we think of the Gen Zers and millennials, Barbie, what we think are the young and scrappy, headphone wearing, soya latte drinking, TikToking, Snapchatting generations. We almost dismiss them because they are still young and they are so full of themselves. That's what we tell them, that they're so narcissistic. But we have to take a step back and look at where the world is going. We must pay attention to them for three reasons. Number one, Gen Zers are now the largest generation in the world. They have roughly 2.47 billion people, and the millennials follow them very closely with around 2.4 billion people. So, given their sheer size, we need to start paying attention to them. Secondly, they are coming to the workplace in a massive scale. So, by 2030, when the last batch of baby boomers will reach the retirement age of 65, these digital natives will make up almost 2/3 of the workforce throughout the world. So we have to realize that right now they may be just the interns and entry level employees, but in 10 years, they may be sitting in positions of power and influence, not only just in business, but in society, in politics, in all aspects of lives. And we must understand them. We must learn how to optimize them and how to work with them. So that's the second force that we need to really pay attention to. And then you have the gig economy. You know, people have asked me, Barbie, out of the three forces, um, which force is the most powerful of them all? And in the beginning, when I started writing the book, I thought the AI and the digital natives would be probably the most powerful forces that we need to pay attention to. But as I did more and more research, I realized that the gig economy has probably the most potent effect on how the work is being done. And the reason why, it's because now technology allows us to embrace freedom. You know, just 20 years ago, Barbie, if you and I wanted to become a freelancer, it was a difficult world to become a freelancer because we would have to network and we'll have to, go and hobnob with people and shake hands
Right.
and send direct mail in our neighborhood. And even if you find the client, Barbie, I mean, you know, it was almost impossible to get paid because you end up usually working for this big organization and you have no negotiating power with them. But technology has changed all of it, and it has made it so easy for anybody in the world to become a freelancer now. So I think we need to pay attention to this force. And just to kind of give you a couple of numbers to make a point here, is by 2030, according to Upwork, which is one of the leading freelancing platforms, almost 50% of the US workforce will be involved in freelancing economy. And that number is going from 35% approximately, around 35% today, to 50% in the next 10 years. So it's going to be a steep growth for this industry. For countries like the Philippines and India, that growth would be even higher. So we need to kind of pay attention to that. Something else that we need to keep in mind is that a lot of the times people think that being a freelancer means being a Uber driver or being a virtual assistant or being a dog walker and selling your services. But that's not the case anymore. 45% of the freelancing economy is made up of professionals in the fields of marketing, in IT, business consulting, accounting, legal, etc. So it's no longer just for people who want to drive Uber or Grab or deliver pizzas to people's home. It's actually attracting more and more professionals to this economy. So think about it. Until now, if for example, if you are trying to hire, I mean, you are a very senior executive at Teletech, and let's say you're trying to hire a director under you. In the past, you were only competing with other 800 BPO companies in the Philippines. But now you're also competing with people's desire to be their own boss. People are going to wonder, like, hey, if I can become a freelancer and I can make a living, why would I go and report into Barbie? I want to be my own boss, right? So that changes how the work will be done and how companies would need to adjust.
No, I agree with you. I think right now, it's almost like, the companies are shrinking to the hardcore decision makers, and then they employ, the rest as, freelancers or independent contractors. And I've realized too that right now there's, more openness or receptiveness to see other organizations that can potentially do it better than their company can. Because in the past, like the talent or the skills are usually monopolized. You want to have all the skills, a one-stop shop. But right now, because there's unlimited access to the talent and skills outside, it's easier to do that rather than owning it all. And I think I also have friends that, even with full-time jobs, the gig economy, the allure and the appeal of flexibility is, getting to them, because it not only supplements their income, but their own development as well. They can, do something that they're truly passionate about, and do, work as much or as little, where they want, when they want. So I agree with you that this is really, important and compelling.
Yeah, and you said it right. As part of my research, I actually came across a couple of Harvard MBAs who left their traditional jobs on Wall Street and said, you know what, enough of this. I want to be my own boss. So they have put their profile on Upwork. Now, they obviously are extremely expensive per hour. So I
I'm
don't know
sure.
whether anybody can afford them. But it goes to show you that the way this generation, especially the digital natives, are looking at their world is very different than how you and I looked at it. I know you are significantly younger than me, but I would have never imagined, my parents would have never allowed me to just say, Maulik, you strike out on your own. They were happy for me to get a good job and, keep married to that job versus trying out new things in my life. So, but that thing is changing now. A lot of the young people, 53% of Gen Zers and 43% of the millennials are now in the gig economy. So it is clearly extremely appealing to them, as you said. And one of my observation doing this research was that so far in the past, Barbie, you and I both, and many of our peers and colleagues, one of the most important aspect of moving jobs or deciding to stay with a company was not only whether we're having fun or not, but also the money. So money played a big role in deciding whether we stay with a company or not. Now, because of the way these young people look at their lives, where experience is more important than how much money they make, the freedom has become the new currency. So if companies can offer freedom for people to create their own customized career path, if the companies can offer freedom for to people where they can execute their own ideas and bring them to fruition, then they would be able to keep these young people with them for a long time. If you have a very rigid, very bureaucratic organization, then it's a matter of time before you lose them.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think, because this, the digital natives, this breed is going to be very special. The demand will be huge. I think, I agree with you that companies really need to, think about, the things that they should do to attract and retain them. And I know you had said, giving them the freedom and empowering them. So what else can companies do to make sure that, to keep them engaged? And you have a track record of, hiring and retaining top talent. So what else can companies do to make sure that, these digital natives are engaged?
Sure. Well, I actually mentioned three different things that differentiate these digital natives. And if you pay attention to these three things, then they will stay longer with them, longer with the companies. So the first thing I talk about in the book is that because of the digital world that they grew up in, they are inherently attracted to companies who can offer them an opportunity to work with the latest technology. I mean, think about the digital natives now. When the Gen Zer became 10 year, the first batch of Gen Zers became 10 years plus, they already had a smartphone in their hand. I was 40 years old when I got my first smartphone in my hand. And then every 2 years, Barbie, they saw this smartphone upgrading. Every 2 years, they saw internet speed and the connectivity speed increasing. Now, because of the COVID-19, sometimes in the Philippines, we don't feel that speed increasing. But slowly but surely, things are getting better. They have seen that Siri and Alexa getting better and smarter every single year. So if you look at the life from their perspective, for them, there is only one way to live, and that is to upgrade, to get better, to get smarter, to get faster every single year, and then you repeat. So that's the mindset that you grew up with, and then you end up with a company that has these legacy platforms, and there isn't app for everything. Then they aren't going to survive too long. They are a generation that believes in, oh, there must be an app for it. I'm not going to sign. I'm not going to create any paper trail here for this. So just give me an app. I'm going to fill up the information, and here we go. If you don't have that, then obviously it will be very hard for you to contain them. The second thing that differentiate them, Barbie, is they're very entrepreneurial. Think about what it takes now to start a new business. If you have a great idea, if you have a smartphone, if you have a PC or a tablet and an internet connectivity, you could be a freelancer and start your own business. So the barrier to entry to start your own business is so low now that it makes it so easy for them to decide whether to become their own boss or to work for someone else. Life was very different for you and I. We saw many people trying out starting a business, mainly in the brick and mortar world, and losing their money, losing their shirts along the way. And so there was a fear of, oh my God, I cannot put everything on the line to be successful in the business. Now that's not the case. So you don't need a lot of investment anymore. If you have a great idea, you have a smartphone, you have a tablet, you have a PC, and an internet connectivity, you can start your business. This generation has also grown up watching. I think it's I forgot the name. It's Charlie D'Amelio. The only reason I know it is because my daughter talks about her. She is like one of the most influential TikTok superstars. She has like 87 million followers.
My
I mean,
gosh.
she is like 17 years old, Barbie, and she's just not very popular. She's also monetizing it by doing commercials now, by showing up on television and Netflix shows. So this generation knows how to use and utilize technology to earn money, earn living. And that's very different than the generations that came before them. And the third thing that differentiates them is that they are very purpose driven. I know we sometimes dismiss them as very narcissistic, full of themselves. But then, all of us, when we were young, we were also full of ourselves. And then life happens and it kind of humbles us along the way. So we should not focus on that. But if you really pay attention to this generation, Barbie, you realize that they are extremely purpose driven. They want to work with companies who are committed to a social cause, who are committed to making the world a better place. There are studies after studies done that shows, Barbie, that if the company is after a big purpose, whether it's helping retain our environment, helping with the climate change, or creating a clean neighborhood, even if the company offers less money, these Gen Zers and millennials will be willing to work for that company versus a company that may be paying a little bit more, but has no purpose. There is no larger than life purpose behind that company. So if you want to retain your younger generations at the company, you need to kind of take a step back and ask yourself, what do we stand for? Do we stand for something more than just making money? Do we stand for making a contribution in the community around us? I mean, if you remember, we used to do CSR back in the days. I'm not sure whether that tradition continues or not, but giving back to the community is an important way to attract and retain these young people.
Thanks a lot, Maulik. And no, that's true. I think, this, like, the CSR is, the outreach that we do. Usually we get a lot of, millennials and this generation's, participation, because to your point, they really want to be part of something bigger than themselves, which in turn, should really compel companies to really rethink their purpose and continue their mission. And so, Maulik, I think, talking about digital natives, and I think this is more of a personal question for me, as a parent, and, we have children that are born into this hyper-connected world, what would be your advice in raising digital natives so that they're geared up to be, the future leaders and shapers of their generation? And, it gives me a lot of anxiety as a parent because, my kids are young, but, I can't imagine being a parent of a teenager, they're looking down at their phones and, you don't want to look constantly over their shoulder thinking of, the things that they're exposed to and what they're absorbing. And so, how do we set them up for success and sort of future-proof their life as well when they grow older as a digital native?
Sure. No, I think that's a great point. And trust me, it gives me heartburn and it gives me sleepless nights when I see my 4-year-old daughter not having enough patience to finish the 15-second TikTok video. I mean, she scrolls up before even the video is over. I remember watching 3-hour Bollywood movies. If you have seen any of the Bollywood movies, Barbie, they go on and on and on. And here is my daughter who cannot even pay attention to a 15-second video. But that is the generation that we are dealing with. And there are two ways of looking at it. I have friends who say, Maulik, we don't want them to be so addicted or so used to the technology around them. And then there is another school of thought that says that, well, at the end of the day, this is the world they are grown up into. If you keep them away from that technology, they would be behind because the people they will be dealing with, their peers in the school and others, would have a leg up in how to use the technology. So just like, if our parents didn't allow us to watch TV, for example, back in my case, 70s and 80s, in your case, probably 90s and the first decade of this year, this century, we would be kind of left behind a little bit because we won't be up to speed on what's happening. And it didn't really do anything damage. I mean, you have turned out okay. My parents say, okay, Maulik, you have also turned out fine. So I don't think we should be keeping them away from the technology. But I have actually dedicated a full chapter, Barbie, on this, that one of the things that people need to do is raise their kids so they become fully human. So for example, if AI will do all the repetitive tasks on our behalf, if AI can read memograms, if AI can do prediction and can do reasoning and create this, you may also like this, recommendations, we have to ask ourselves, what are some of the things that AI cannot do? And those are the things that we need to expose our kids with. So some of the things that I highlight in the book are, AI doesn't know how to create something out of nothing. You and I could be watching a sunset and it may inspire us to write a poem, for example, or it may inspire us to paint a masterpiece or write a song or write an essay, whatever our creativity belongs to. But AI doesn't know. If you put sunset in front of AI is not going to come up with a poem or a masterpiece. So AI doesn't know how to be creative. So expose your kids to as many creative pursuits as possible where they can create something, whether it's a painting, whether it's a writing, whatever their hearts desire, whatever their natural inclinations are. We need to allow them to explore those creative pursuits and let them continue that. The second thing that AI cannot do is AI doesn't have a heart or a conscience. So AI doesn't know when something is fair or not fair. I'll give you an example. In 2014, Amazon tried to create an AI algorithm to select the top 5 resumes from some 50,000 resumes that they were receiving every single week. They were receiving so many resumes that, Barbie, they didn't know what to do with it. So they thought, well, let's just create an AI algorithm where you feed 100 resumes and it gives you the top 5. So how do they teach the AI algorithm to learn this? By feeding the resumes from the last 10 years. Now think about it. Typically, at least 10 years ago, a lot of the engineers were male. They were men. So AI looked at resume after resume, and they were predominantly male. So it created a learning on its own that if it's a male resume, you are a better engineer. So the
Wow.
only resumes it will select among the 5 would be the male resumes. So the point that I'm trying to drive is that it succeeded in selecting the best 5 resumes, but it did not know that while doing it, it actually exacerbated the whole diversity issue that we are dealing with at the workplace. That it is unfair to women engineers just because they went to women's college, it was taken out. That it's unfair. So AI doesn't know what is unfair or fair. That's something we need to do a better job with. And if we can continue to cultivate that skill, then we are in a good spot with our kids. The third thing I talked about the heart. AI doesn't know how to empathize. Imagine, AI knows you may have a cancerous tumor, but we won't rely AI to deliver that news to the patient. Ultimately, that news has to be delivered to the patient through a human being, because a doctor can give you the worst possible news, but in a way that is with empathy, that is with a concern for you, that AI is not able to do today. So we need to continue to work on our empathy. We used to talk a lot about malasakit, Barbie, if you remember.
Yes.
So malasakit is a word that is an enigma to AI. It doesn't understand what malasakit means, and it would be years before it understands what malasakit means. So if we can cultivate more empathy and malasakit in our kids, then we would be in a good position. Something else that AI is not able to do is deal with unpredictable and unprecedented situations. So imagine if AI was the CEO or a president of a country during the COVID-19 crisis. AI only knows what to do if you have fed a lot of historical data. But COVID-19 is such an unprecedented event. I mean, yes, there was a Spanish flu that happened 100 years ago, but it was a different world at that time. AI would have completely created a disaster if it was leading us through this crisis. So our ability to deal with unprecedented, unexpected, unpredictable crisis is very human, and we need to continue to cultivate that skill to make sure that we are future proof from our perspective, and also teaching those things to our kids as well.
No, Maulik, I think that's very encouraging, both as a parent and as a leader. And I manage the healthcare segment for T Tech today, and that your example of like delivering say bad news about say a sickness to a patient that even the most sophisticated AI may not be able to do a better job than humans. And I think all that you had shared, looking at, creativity, intuition, resourcefulness, or having that malasakit, I think even if there's a threat of maybe taking away jobs through AI, it forces us to also take a closer look at our own strengths in a way that we probably never had before. And so I appreciate that, you have been a strong advocate of malasakit throughout, the time that I've known you. And, I'm just curious too, because of, these easier, boring jobs are shifting to artificial intelligence. Potentially what the employees could be left with would be, I guess, more complex stuff, more difficult jobs that would require maybe more critical thinking or more brain power. And to some extent, it could be stressful as well. So, how do we avoid, I want to say, employee, burnout or stress if we're now left with, I guess, the harder jobs because AI has already taken the easier ones?
No, you were right on the dot. I think one of the things that we have to do is be aware of this very unique paradox that we have created in our lives. Think about it, Barbie. You and I have been in this business process outsourcing industry for now 20 years. I remember when I came here to the Philippines for the first time, it was just 20,000 people. Now there are 1.3 million people. But one of the things that I've noticed, and you'll probably agree with this, is that we we have taken humans and we then take them through so many trainings and we tell them, do not do this and do not do this. We give them boundaries. Then we give them a QA form that says, if you do this, we're going to ding you, and you do this, we're going to ding you. And then that QA form goes on for like 4 or 5 pages. So we give them so many rules and regulations that we essentially take any humanity that is left out of them. So we take the humans and we turn them into robots, while the world is spending billions of dollars turning chatbots and robots into more human. So see the paradox that's taking place here. And I think one of the ways that this industry and all the other industries that would need to reinvent themselves is by allowing the humans to be human again, allowing us to have a little bit of a free flow in how we converse with our clients and our customers and how we go about solving problems. Because you're absolutely right. Most of the easy issues would be taken care of by the AI. So when somebody really reaches out to you, they are looking for a human touch. They are looking for empathy. They are looking for someone who can understand them, somebody who can feel them. These are all moments of truths that we need to take advantage of. And the only way we can do that is undo a lot of the training that we have done over the last 20 years and almost create training that allows humans to be more human, allows them to be more creative, allows them to be more empathetic without giving them scripts and the rules and the regulations. Because we, at the end of the day, we know how to solve other people's problems. We know how to create the right solutions and right moments that would create more value for our clients and customers.
Thanks a lot, Maulik. No, I agree with you. A lot of great insights so far. I think we can shift gears to, the meat of your book, which is actually future-proofing, your career and company. So in terms of future-proofing your career, what are the 5 things you can do to, future-proof your career?
Yeah, sure. The best way to future-proof your career, and I think a lot of our attendees are focused on how do they future-proof themselves. So, we'll probably spend a little bit more time here, and then we'll very quickly go through how to future-proof your company. So I mentioned briefly that in order for you to future-proof yourself and your career, first and foremost, you need to create the right informed perspective about what the future would be like. And in the book, I talk about 5 dimensions of the future that you must understand and you must master and you must be prepared for. And I'll take you through each of these dimensions, Barbie, and then talk about what you can do to future-proof yourself. So the first dimension is obviously future is AI. So be a human. And we have covered a lot of grounds because you asked some really good questions, Barbie. So maybe we may be kind of repeating some of the things here, but very quickly, AI is not going anywhere. AI is going to be an important part of our lives. We better not deny it. Let's not live in a la la land that says my world is not going to change. AI is not going to touch my job. We all need to accept the fact that the AI is going to change our jobs. And the best way to future-proof ourselves in the world of AI is to become a human that AI cannot replicate. Some of the things that we briefly talked about, learn to improve your creativity. Leonardo da Vinci once said that fire up your whole brain. If you are analytical, work on being creative. If you're creative, work on being analytical. Because when you are working on all parts of your brain, that is something that AI is not able to do today. AI is able to solve very specific problem, but is not able to look at 2 or 3 different parts of our lives and bring them together, synthesize them, and find a solution. AI doesn't know how to empathize, so learn to become a little bit more empathetic. AI doesn't know how to be resourceful in times of crisis, so learn to be more resourceful. So those are the things that we talked about, Barbie, that we need to continue working on and be prepared for. The second dimension of the future is that future is change. So instead of being affected by the change negatively, instead of denying the fact that there is a change, instead of just passively accepting the change, what I'm suggesting in the book is that you have to almost be the catalyst for change in your company, in your organization. You have to almost be the champion of the positive change, because more and more companies would realize that each industry has an Amazon or a Uber or a Airbnb that is disrupting everything. Think about the J.C. Penney's or the Macy's or the Kmart's of the world in the U.S., Barbie. A lot of these people, a lot of these businesses are going out of business because of Amazon. Each industry has an Amazon, a disruptor that's going to completely change everything. So the only companies that will survive going forward are the companies that will be able to keep up with these changes and stay ahead of the curve. So in order for the companies to achieve that, companies would also need a lot of employees who can be adaptable to change, who can be the champions and the catalysts for change. So very important for people to learn to be the catalyst for change versus just accepting the way things are or accepting the change that comes their way. The third dimension is that the future is people be an alchemist. Now, it's kind of the opposite of the very first point, that future is AI, be a human. Even despite the fact that the AI will be playing an important role over the next 10 years, people are not going anywhere. As you mentioned, there are going to be tasks that only humans can do for the next 10 years. So it's important for you to continue to learn how to become an inspiring leader, how to become an alchemist that can take ordinary people and let them do extraordinary things. And the way you do that is you have to create a very strong vision as to where you want the people to go. I remember back in my Teletech days, when I started, we had like 6,000 employees. When I left, we had like 22,000 employees. And the reason we were able to do that, Barbie, is because as a leadership team, we met in a summit and we all signed up to say, you know what, we can do so much better. Convergys at that time was 15,000 employees, and we like, why would we be at 6,000 employees? We can also go to 15,000 employees, but we ended up with even more. And the way we did that is because we created a very strong vision, and then we allowed people the freedom. We empowered them to bring their best. We removed all the bureaucracy, we removed all the politics, and we allowed people to be the very best that they can be. We also gave them credit. And when something didn't work, the leaders took the blame for it. So those are some of the skills that you need to learn as an alchemist. I'm sure you are doing that today for Teletech, where your team is probably extremely loyal to you because they know that if you work for Barbie, she's going to be able to take me from point A to point B, and it's going to be an amazing ride. The fourth element, Barbie, is that the future is turbulent, and be a captain. So the reason I think the future is turbulent is because if you look around the world today, what do you see? You see massive disruption. You see jobs and skills becoming irrelevant. You are seeing that the companies and industries are becoming obsolete overnight. And this rate of disruption is only going to change. So if you're a leader, the way you would lead your team through this very treacherous terrain ahead is going to define you whether you're going to have an amazing future as a leader or not. One of the things that you have to learn is to be a kind of a captain with nerves of steel. And in that particular chapter, Barbie, when you get the book, you'll realize I write about Captain Schultz, who landed the plane on one engine when there was a big hole in the fuselage, the main cabin.
Oh,
And the reason why she was able to do that is because despite the fact all the turbulence that was happening with the plane in the main cabin, and the passengers were saying their final prayers and final calls to their families,
Yeah.
she stayed focused on her job, and her job at that time was to only land the plane safely. And that's exactly what she did. And a lot of our leaders would need to learn how to land the plane safely, or how to navigate our ship to the safe harbor through these crazy storms that are coming our way. And the last piece, and I'm going to open up for your questions, because I'm sure I can see your face like, Maulik, I have some questions and I want to add in here. But the last piece, Barbie, is the future is unknown. So be a futurist. And what I'm trying to say here is that nobody knows what the future is going to be. Yogi Berra once said very beautifully, that it's very hard to predict, especially the future. And that says a lot, because it is hard to make a prediction, but it's not impossible. And what I mean to say here is that we are surrounded by clues and trends that gives us the glimpse of where the future is going to be. So for example, the fact that my daughter cannot even stick with a 15-second TikTok video is a sign as to what kind of future we are heading to, where we are going to have people. She's going to be one day 24 years old and with the same attention span, and the world would be a different place. I read a news article that says that Hyundai is partnering with Uber to create flying cars. Clearly, again, it's a trend, and it gives you a glimpse that one day, yes, we have only seen flying cars in sci-fi movies, but it's something that may happen one day, and we need to prepare for it. The fact that I am now learning new skills on YouTube without reading books or without attending any training classes is also a clue as to where the world is going, that more and more people are turning to self studies, and they're finding ways to learn new skills, new hobbies, by going to YouTube or other channels that allows them to continue to become a better human being. So that's also a trend. So all these things that are happening around us, we need to start paying attention to them, and we need to kind of stop every time we come across a trend and say, wow, you know what, I mean, this is happening today. Where do you think this trend is going? What's the velocity with it's increasing, and where would it end up with in the next 10 years? And if we can do that, then we will be the kind of futurist who can at least predict the types of futures that we may have to one day embrace and encounter. So now I'm going to stop. I know I talked a lot. I'll leave you to ask me some questions or make your comments as well, because I'm sure you are living through those as well.
Yeah, no, these are all great, descriptions, and, it energizes me to, think about, how we can all be catalysts and alchemists. And, I love that, we could really be a catalyst of change. I think the world is going to be different, after COVID-19, but the future is going to be even more different 10 years from now. And so, are the old assumptions about working no longer hold true, and we find ourselves radically reshaped with everything that's going on. But I think this is very encouraging, because now we can seize the day with opportunities that never existed before. And I'm just I what's striking to me here is really being the catalyst of change. And I have been blessed in my career to have had a lot of great mentors, you included, that I've thrived in the BPO industry, and I try to employ the same to serve my teams in the same capacity. But what would be your advice to maybe some of the folks listening right now that they're intensely passionate about being a catalyst for change, but they're kind of unsure where to start? And to me, one of the best advice would be find a great mentor. But what else can they do to make sure that they keep that fire going and be passionate about the future?
Sure. No, and I get that question quite a bit as well, Barbie. I think in the book I write about how to become a catalyst, because it's one thing to say, "Oh, become a catalyst," because anybody can say that. But how does one become a catalyst? I actually lay out that entire process in the book, but very briefly, what does a catalyst do, Barbie? The way catalyst differentiate herself or himself from others is when a catalyst comes across something they think is mediocre, that could be better, they think is unfair, or they think there's a better solution for it, they won't just shrug their shoulders and say, you know what, yeah, it can be better, but I'll live with this. Catalysts would not say that. Catalysts would say no more to mediocre. Catalysts would say no more to unfair and become a positive change by bringing the rest of the team on his or her vision on how to become a better organization, a better team, a better solution. So one of the first things you have to do to become a catalyst is to create those muscles to say no more. And just like, playing tennis or learning swimming or playing guitar, the first time you do it, you're not good. I mean, first time you do it, you'll drown in swimming. First time you play guitar, you look like an idiot. But you have to start somewhere. And I always tell people that start with something very small. So, for example, if you have kids going to school and you find out that your kid is being bullied in the school, now as a parent you have a choice. Either you say, you know what, that's what the life is, and that's how the kids are now, that they are bullying each other, so I don't like it, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Or you can say no more, I'm going to be part of the solution, I'm going to become part of the parent teacher association, I'm going to go to the school and start talking to the teachers on how they can improve the environment for all the students. That's way to become a catalyst. If you don't like your toxic friends you have in your life or relatives, we all have some of those. You have a choice to say, this is my life. I'm stuck with these friends and I'm stuck with these relatives for the rest of my life. But the catalyst would not say that. Catalyst would say, you know what, no more. Either have a good conversation with those people and say, this is how you feel about it. And if they don't change, then, find friends and relatives. Unfortunately, you cannot really find relatives outside, but surround yourself with people who actually uplift you. They are not bringing you down. So every time you come across something that you don't like in your life, you have an opportunity that's an opportunity given by God to you to say, okay, what are you going to do now? Are you going to live with this, or are you going to do something about it? So when you start doing these things with smaller things, you have cultivated enough muscles. So when you go to work and you don't like the strategy your peers are trying to pursue or your boss is trying to pursue, you have already cultivated enough muscles to have the courage to go to your boss or your peers and very professionally say, guys, I think there is a better way of doing it. I'm willing to put my heart and soul into it. I'm willing to do heavy lifting. I'm not just going to say, hey, by the way, you can do this better and then walk away. But you can actually bring that idea to fruition. So if you start doing some of those things, then it becomes part of your nature. It becomes like a second nature to you, like riding a bicycle. Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, when you ride a bicycle, you don't think about you're riding a bicycle. You are thinking about other things. So you want to get to a point where being a catalyst is not something that you're forced to do, but it's just part of your repertoire. That's your personality, that when you don't like something, you're going to change.
Thanks a lot, Molly. I think, and if I have teams right now who are listening, I'm sure they're probably nodding their heads because that's very practical advice. And it's very empowering to let's say, activate the muscle memory of being a catalyst. So I think that's great. And then Maulik, in terms of future proofing your company as well, I know there are 5 things as well that, one can do to future proof their company. And so, we'd love to hear from you on it.
Sure. So, what we covered are the things that individual leaders must do but leaders also have to future-proof the companies, and the higher up you are in the organization, more responsibility is up to you on making sure that your company is not just relevant today, but also 5-10 years down the road. So what are the 5 things you must do? So first thing is, again, you have to have the right perspective about what the future would be for your company. And you have to understand the 5 dimensions of the future. So the first dimension that as a company you should be prepared for is that the future is digital, and that you must transform your business. And the reason why a lot of the companies fail at this digital transformation, Barbie, is because they think the digital transformation we are talking about is about the technology. So, they would go to the seminar or an industry event and hear about some latest and greatest buzzword about the technology. And they think that if they buy that technology and stick it into their legacy system, they are suddenly a transformed business. And that's a wrong way to look at it. The way to transform your business as a company is to start with end in mind. And the end here is, what are you trying to achieve for your customers, for your employees, and other stakeholders? The question you have to ask yourself is, how can you improve your customers' experience by using technology? So technology is not the end or be it all. Technology is a means to an end. The second question you have to ask yourself is, how can I improve my employee experience? How can I engage my employees more? So again, you have to ask yourself, what technology I can use to make the employee experience better? Are we still doing paper trails for HR processes? Can we turn them into apps that the younger generations would appreciate more? And the third question you have to ask is our business model still relevant, and will it be relevant 5 years, 10 years down the road? I mean, and I give an example in the book that Domino's Pizza went through this massive digital transformation. 12 years ago, it was going through one of its worst episodes. Their stock market, their stock price was tanking. Nobody was liking their pizza. People would leave a comment that your crust tastes like cardboard, and your ketchup tastes like something else, and you need to do something about it. So Domino's Pizza actually took that to heart and said, we must do something about it. So not only they changed the recipe for the pizza, but they actually took a step back and changed the complete customer experience. Back in the day, and I used to live in the US at that time, you can order Domino's Pizza only 2 ways. Either you call and they will deliver the pizza at your home, or you walk into a Domino's Pizza outlet and collect your pizza and then go home or eat there. Now, Barbie, I mean, you have 15 ways to order
Wow.
Domino's Pizza, including a way where there is an option where you don't have to click anything. You just open the Domino's app and you keep it open for 10 seconds. It automatically orders your favorite pizza and it delivers it in the 30 minutes.
Wow.
So Domino's did not focus on technology. Domino's focused on how to improve the customer experience, how to improve the employee experience. So transformation of the business is not about having the latest and the greatest technology. It's about actually creating better experiences for your customers, for your employees. And along the way, obviously, it would translate into better revenue and better profit for the company. So the next dimension, Barbie, is that future is meaningful. So infuse purpose. I talked a little bit about the fact that the digital generations are very purpose driven, more so than other generations. They want to work with companies who stand for something. So before they stand with you as customers or employees, they want to know, as a company, what do you stand for? They want to know, before they commit to you, what do you commit to in terms of your corporate social responsibility? So it's so important. It's not just a nice thing to do anymore, that, we have a CSR and it's because we want to give back to the community. It's actually the most pragmatic thing a company can do, by having a purpose-driven organization that kind of drives everything that the company is doing. So very important that companies need to now take a step back and look at their CSR program and say, is our CSR program just for the sake of a CSR program? Are we just having this so we have a paragraph in our annual report every year about a CSR, and then we have a picture of a CEO giving a big check to a charity? Is that why the CSR program? Or are we like company, Patagonia or other companies who are taking their corporate social responsibility seriously, and everything they do permeates around their overall purpose. So critical thing for companies to understand is that they must have a very strong purpose that permeates throughout the organization. The third thing is the future is boundless. And so we have to unleash innovation at the organization. Uh, Future is always going to give us opportunities to create new products and create new services, but you can only take advantage of those if you have built an organization that promotes innovation within the company. The reason why a lot of companies actually fail at innovation, Barbie, is because they think that in order for them to be innovative, they have to do all the cosmetic things. If they take their C-suite on a week-long boondoggle to Silicon Valley, they would think that, oh, if we go to Silicon Valley and breathe all this innovation, maybe we'll be transformed. And when we come back to our country, we'll still have that innovation spirit. Sometimes companies think that, oh, we are very traditional, we are very bureaucratic, but maybe the way to become innovative is to go out and buy a startup. But the problem is, startup is very innovative, but if you buy it and you stick it into a very slow-paced bureaucratic organization, that startup is going to smother, it's going to die. And that's not going to make you innovative. If you have a hackathon every month or once a year, and you get the best ideas from your employees on how to improve your XYZ, but then those ideas end up at the end or the bottom of your company's priorities, then you are not going to be innovative. So companies' innovation is not about doing this random cosmetic changes. It's about changing the perspective internally. And one of the things that I write in the book about, Barbie, is that one of the ways the companies can be innovative is by marrying to what is timeless versus temporary. One of the reasons why Blockbuster, for example, and I don't think Blockbuster was a big thing here in Asia, but it was a huge thing in the US, where they would basically, you can go to the stores and rent a video and then watch the video movie with your family. The reason why it got bankrupt and it's no longer there is because it was so married to its products and services and business model. But all of those things are very temporary. Your products will continue to change, your services will continue to change, your business model will continue to change. So because they were so married to it, they could not see anything beyond that box. Whereas Netflix is the opposite of it. Netflix is not married to the products and services and the business model. It started in late 90s as a company that would send a DVD by mail. But then in 2007, it realized that streaming is becoming more important. So they changed gear. They were not married to the DVD by mail model. So they moved their strategy to streaming their content. And then in 2013, they realized that it's better to not only stream the content, but create your own content. So now they have their own shows that we are so, addicted to in a way. So Netflix is a great example of how a company should not be married to their products and services. They should be married to the timeless, the skills and the talents and the culture of innovation that they have built, that no matter what change in direction they do, they have enough employees who are empowered and they have the right skills that they're able to achieve that goal. The fourth element of future-proofing your career is that the future is new. So you must inspire learning. One of the things that impressed me the most while I was doing research is that how many jobs are going to completely change over the next 10 years. Many jobs may be displaced, and we would need to reskill these employees into something that we would need in the future. But there are also jobs, Barbie, that would need to be upskilled because job profile and job description will change. We'll also need to make sure that we train all of our employees on how to better partner with AI. I mean, in your job, if let's say you have someone who is taking 1 hour's worth of call, now let's say 30% of that time is taken care of by AI, what would you like that employee to do with that 30% that has freed up now? I mean, how can you train that person to create more value for your clients and your customers? So we must embrace the future by grooming our workforce for the future. And it will require a lot of strategy versus a lot of the tactics that are taking place right now in our L&D efforts. And then the last one, Barbie, is the future is fun. Enjoy expedition. I always remember my time with Teletech because it was the most intense 3 years of my life. I mean, we went from 6,000 employees to 22,000 employees. We opened so many new centers, and we inaugurated them with the president of the Philippines. But even though it was hard work, Barbie, at least what I remember is that I had a great time. I absolutely enjoyed that expedition. So the point that we need to understand is that future is going to be difficult. It's going to be stressful, but it's up to the leaders like you and I to create an environment where our employees actually enjoy this expedition. That one day, 20 years down the road, when they look back, they would look back as that experience as an experience of a lifetime, a journey of a lifetime with an XYZ company versus oh my God, that was the Monday to Friday a recurring nightmare that I had to go through for these 3-4 years. So it's up to the leaders to create that environment that people would always remember that time. And if you do that, then everything else becomes secondary. If people are having a great time, if people are bought into your purpose, if people are given the freedom and they're empowered, then they will make sure that the company is future proof and the company will have a great ride ahead. Wow. So I'll stop again here.
So Maulik, I think these are all, great takeaways. And, I love the last one, which is, fun. And I agree with you, that was a pretty stressful time because work, to go from, 6,000 to 20,000 can really be, hard. But I remember, and I don't know, I don't even know if you remember this, but I have a, backstory that I remember being a new manager and, the work was, was a lot and it was overwhelming for me as, a new leader. But I remember that you had said, 15, 20 years from now, the KPIs or the statistics will be, sort of there's a semblance of a memory, but what we'll truly remember are the relationships that we've built, the values we shaped together, the smiles that we exchange with each other, and just how all these experiences will change us for the better. I mean, and that was, I want to say 15 years ago, but that has still been my driving force to this day. So, and I agree with you that, creating meaning and, it's not just the CEO, posting that check. I think right now the generation is more observant and they can really see through sincere, authentic leadership. So, they can't be fooled. And so, these things are going to be critical for companies to, move forward and be successful. And so, Maulik, I'm also very interested about innovation and, you talking about, the future being boundless, and you talk about Blockbuster, and I remember, the Blackberries and the Kodaks of the world that even in the height of their popularity, they unfortunately had become obsolete. So why do most companies fail at innovation, and what would be your counsel for those that are, want to avoid that fate?
Sure. So, the most important thing is to create an organization that is not married to the products, services, and the business model, so to speak. Instead, the companies who are married to the timeless aspects of the company. And what are the timeless aspects of the companies? The skills and the talents and the collective culture of innovation. I share a personal example that when I went to the US from India in 1991, my maiden flight to US, the parting thought, a parting advice from my mother at that time was that, Maulik, you are not what your possessions. You are not your possessions. And I did not understand what she meant by that, that you are more than your possessions. But I realized over the years that what she was trying to say is that, don't be married to the possessions that you have, whether your car, your house, your job, or your title, but be married to your potential. Because if you have the potential in you, you can manifest it in many different ways. So even if you lose your car or lose your job or lose your house, you're able to recreate that. But if you are defined only by your possessions, then if you lose one of them, you feel like part of you is also lost. And the same thing applies to the companies as well, that they need to really be married to the timeless aspect of the company. And the timeless aspect of the company is not the physical buildings or the facilities or their business model. It's their ability to attract and retain the best talent, allow them to create amazing things for the company, and creating a culture of innovation. So that's number one. And then second thing is companies often fail at innovation because people don't have their same view of what innovation means. When you Google the definition of innovation, Barbie, you will come across like 100 different definitions. So imagine if company says, well, we would like to be innovative. Uh, Different people in the company would have different understanding of what company wants to do. So the first thing company has to do is to agree on what innovation means. And one of the best and the most eloquent definition I came across, and I have written that in the book, is that innovation means executing new ideas to create value. So it's very simple. It's three aspects, right? New ideas, execution, create value. So it's not old ideas. Secondly, it's not just coming up with the idea, but execution is important. And the most important part of it is that you're creating value. That is so important because you can have amazing idea and you can execute them. But if those ideas don't create any value for your customers or your employees, then that's not innovation. That's just, someone's pet project that got approved and somebody's just tinkering with technology, right? We want to avoid that. So as long as everybody in the company is married to the same definition and is looking at innovation in the same way, then you are in a good spot. And then obviously you need to come up with your own strategy as to what innovation means to your company. I mean, you could be doing what they call incremental innovation. So I give an example in the book of Gillette razor, right? I've been using it for the last 25 years, and I have seen it go from very rudimentary one blade razor to now 5 blades with all the fancy stuff up and down that makes the shaving so easy. So they didn't go from 1 blade to 5 blade. Over the last 25 years, Barbie, they have been incrementally innovating and making it better and better and better. So as a company, you can approach your products that way. You're just making your products a little bit better every single month, every single year. Or you can also do adjacent innovation. So Amazon is a great example of it. Amazon started its business selling books, but then it realized that, wow, I mean, they figured out how to sell books online. They have mastered the art of supply chain. Why not use that same concept for other products? And now guess what's happening? I mean, they are basically selling everything in addition to books in the world. And then they went from there to, hey, we are selling it in the US, we can do the same thing globally. So that's what they are doing. So that's what we call the adjacent innovation. And then the third one is the revolutionary innovation, which Apple brought to us. Like, Steve Jobs, when he launched the smartphone, he told us that, sometimes you have to bring products where there is no market. Nobody knew that there was a market for smartphone. So sometimes you have to also come up with the products that has no defined market in the past. You are the one creating the new market. So once you have defined those things, then obviously, Barbie, the most difficult part of being innovative is to execute all the strategies. That's when the leadership team, starting with the C-suite and even the board, has to be 100% focused on making sure that these ideas don't remain just ideas, but they get implemented.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with you on innovation. I mean, right now it's not just part of the economy. It's almost like an appendage to, the business. It's such a fundamental, part of a growing company to continue to reinvent themselves and make sure. And I remember I was watching an interview with Elon Musk, and he said, if you don't push for radical breakthroughs, you can't expect radical outcomes, and this entails, a lot of transformation and innovation. And so, very interesting discussion, Maulik. And so I think one of the last questions that we have is, in terms of learning, you had talked about learning, what can companies do to upskill and reskill employees for future needs? And I had heard you, use the term expert student, which is, I think, a great, way to describe, that hunger for learning and the continuous learning.
Sure. I mean, the best way to create a learning organization is, as leaders, you have to show to your employees that you are a learner. If they see you as leaders, sharpening your tools, if they see you becoming a better person, if they see you trying to become the future you that would be required by the company, then they would be inspired to learning as well. So that's obviously number one. I think something else that companies also need to do is think beyond the traditional L&D efforts that we do. And I talk about this in the book, that one of my vivid memories of our time together at Teletech, Barbie, is inviting this very special guest, Janet Bellarmino. She was among the top 3 Filipina women who climbed Mount Everest in 2007. And right after she came back to the Philippines, they were doing a roadshow of giving inspirational talks around the country. And if you remember, we invited her to come and speak with our leaders in different sites at that time. And one of the things she talked about was that when she was climbing Mount Everest, she did not spend a lot of time looking at the summit, because every time she looked at the summit, she felt like she would never get there because it looked so out of her reach, that it was so far and it was so tall and it was so steep. The only thing she kept focused on was looking at the next step that was in front of her. So all of her effort and energy was focused on the next step and the next step and the next. And before you know it, she was on the top of the world. So that concept, that inspiration actually came to me through her, because if you remember, we had just came out of our business planning in a leadership strategy, and we had all signed up on a page that says, yes, we are going to go from 6,000 employees to 25,000 employees. And every time we thought of the 25,000 employee goal, we wanted to give up. We wanted to throw in the towel. And that's exactly when she came in and said, don't look at your summit, just take one step at a time. And I actually used that concept even writing the book. I just, focused every day when I woke up in the morning. I just said, I'm not going to think about 48,000 words that I need to write. I'm just going to focus on writing 500 words. And those out of the box guests can bring unique perspectives. And I think companies need to do more and more of that, if it's possible in the communities that you live in.
And Maulik, I remember that visual actually of the mountain and the summit. I mean, I remember that to this day, that, we had embarked on that journey, but, every step, became important, and we were just, taking one step at a time. And before we know it, we were, 20,000 strong. So, and I think it takes a lot of humility to, to continue to learn and to sometimes listen to uncomfortable opinions of others. And I think, some of the best leaders that I've worked with are, humble enough to, listen to other viewpoints that are maybe different from their own. And that's, that's, I guess, the only way we learn and, make sure that, we take care of the future. And so, Molly, I think we could go on all day talking about book. And so, I know we have some questions from our listeners. And so I think we'll take about a 2 to 3 minute break, and then we'll take some questions live from our attendees. And I think we also have questions from YouTube and Facebook. So we'll take a quick break.
Okay, great. Let's do that.